Good morning, everyone. I think I've used this meme before, but I liked it. I saw it yesterday and I chuckled. So this is Trudeau, an unbearded Trudeau, yelling at a cooked goose. Stupid goose, where are my golden eggs? And the goose's name is Alberta. And C69 is burning on the log, burning on the fire below it. Very interesting. Again, I like memes and I think that they're fun. Yesterday I reported about the maybe the mask being legally stopped, the mask mandates being legally stopped. And then we were all crushed right after that when I said, yeah, no, the judge threw out the lawsuit. Turns out I was wrong. There are two lawsuits at least, and I think probably more. One is the Edmonton man, and this is the CTV News report about that one getting tossed out. Man's $565 million anti-mask lawsuit, an abuse of the court, Edmonton judge rules. Now, this is what I'm usually concerned about if somebody comes up with, and his idea was to get headlines with the $565 million amount. But what they do is they use it to discredit you, right? Like they use it to make you look like a crazy person when really you're just trying to get people to read the article or whatever. And when the newspaper can spin it, they'll highlight abuse of the court and they talk about, the first line of the article is a COVID-19 conspiracy theorist who tried to sue the city of Edmonton over its mandatory mask bylaw has had his lawsuit terminated by a judge. So the judge didn't rule in it. They just said this is a violation of the court and blah, blah, blah. And so they use it to basically say, don't even try it, right? Here's the Justice Center, and they're doing the same thing. They're trying to challenge this. This is in a Calgary court, so these are different, and I think this one's being heard Monday, but I could be wrong about that. Hold on, here we go. Somebody who sent me this link said that these guys will be getting their court date on Monday, but I that doesn't say that in the article here. I'll read to you what it says. They said it's not going to be months, but it might be weeks. So anyway, here it is. This is from December 7th. Today is the 18th. So maybe they did get it. Maybe it is Monday. Could be weeks, right? Monday, that's weeks. Alberta-based Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms plan to launch lawsuit over COVID-19 restrictions in BC. The Calgary-based Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom says they plan to bring their fight against Alberta public health orders designed to curb the spread of coronavirus to other provinces, including British Columbia. Speaking out on the NL Noon report, lawyer James Kitchen says they intend to argue that orders by the Chief Medical Health Officer violate the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, such as the right to peacefully assemble, the right to visit friends and family, the right to freely practice religious beliefs, the right to travel, and the right to conduct business and earn a living. So the argument for our client's perspective is you violated our rights, and the rights violation, the way you've done this, is actually imposing more harm than if you didn't do it, he said. In addition to BC, Kitchen says the JCCF, that's the Justice Center, intends to bring similar charter challenges to Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. BC is not the number 2 or 3. Alberta was first, Manitoba is probably coming second, and then Saskatchewan, Ontario, and then BC after that. It might not be until early January that we're able to file in British Columbia. It's not going to be months, but it could be weeks, it could be the new year. We may get something filed by the end of the month. It's coming in the imminent future, but not tomorrow. Okay, so people are fighting against mandatory masks. They're getting thrown out in some courts, but this one sounds better put together. But who knows? I haven't read the lawsuit. I don't know if they've dotted their I's, crossed their T's, and made sure the judge doesn't have any any conflicting interests. Let's just say. Okay. Like Judge Roberts, right? Just maybe. Anyway, Cardinal Burke says COVID was used for an evil agenda. We are now the subject of what is called the Great Reset. I think he says the subjects. We are now the subjects of the Great Reset. I'm going to play this. I think that it's interesting to listen to other people. And I don't know Cardinal Burke, but it seems to me that there are people all across lots of different multidisciplinary professions that are coming to the same conclusion. This is bunk. And what we're doing is destroying our culture, destroying our economy for nothing. For nothing. We're not even protecting the people who are dying. So what are we doing? All this money shoveled out to have more long-term care people die? Are we expecting a zero death rate of long-term care? Is that how we unlock our freedoms again? Or do we have to wait for the court challenges? Okay, here's Cardinal Burke. Here we go.
Then there is the mysterious Wuhan virus, about whose nature and prevention the mass media daily give us conflicting information. What is clear, however, is that it has been used by certain forces, inimical to families and to the freedom of nations, to advance their evil agenda. These forces tell us that we are now the subjects of the so-called Great Reset, the new normal, which is dictated to us by their manipulation of citizens and nations through ignorance and fear.
If you felt alone, don't feel alone. There are people across all sorts of professions that are coming to the same conclusion that you are, that I am, that this is crazy. This response is nuts. We're going to go through some of the things that are happening. Ontario reports, this is 22 hours ago, 2,432 new cases. OHA calls for 4-week regional lockdowns. Lockdowns! They want lockdowns. Toronto's been in a lockdown since November 10th or 11th? November 11th, because I remember talking about it, saying they did it so that people wouldn't gather for Remembrance Day. And again, this goes to the destruction of our culture. It's not healthy to run onto a beach being shelled, right, or shot at. That's really not healthy, right? Oh, you guys stay on your couch. You know, those Nazis might get angry, and they might come over here too. It's crazy. It's crazy what's happening. It's crazy what's happening. It's crazy. Okay, Millhouse, thank you, Millhouse, for putting together all these charts. This is a very good breakdown of the death rate. And he says, here's what the total number of deaths in Canada over the past 4 years. The most recent 12 months of data do not suggest a spike in deaths relative to historical trends. And you can see the chart here. And the dark green is 2016 to 2017, and the lightest green on the far right is this year, 2020. And he breaks it down by province, and he breaks it down by all of Canada, breaks it down by year. This is a very, very useful graph. Anybody looking at this graph would say, we did what to our economy? For what reason? And he goes through more. He says, zooming out nationally over the past decade, we see that it's perfectly natural for deaths in one year to exceed deaths in the previous year. This does not necessarily equal excess deaths. Look at how often the blue growth line is above zero. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes there's more deaths in the following year. And he carries on. So deaths are rising. Is that due to population growth, population aging? It's a bit of both, but not COVID. Here we have the chart you saw earlier, now expressed as a rate per 100,000 people. Generally, a flatter trend in death rates would suggest the population growth may be the key factor driving growth in total deaths. Across the decade, again, we see that we adjust for population growth. The growth trend is weaker, but still there. The aging of the population is likely the primary factor. Deaths are rising in absolute and relative terms, suggesting a combination of population growth and aging. And too early to draw conclusions on what this means, but here are leading causes of death in Canada over the past 4 years. Many recent deaths remain unclassified in the information unavailable column and will presumably will be properly attributed over time. So I'm glad that there are people out there who can crunch data this way and who understand data this way. I haven't been trained to do that, and I didn't like math when I was younger. I think I'd like math better now, but I didn't like math when I was younger. So I'm glad and thankful for people who can make data that bite-sized for people. You can understand that, right? And you can say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Please explain yourselves. Here's Jason Chapman. He says, I asked the MOH to provide ICU capacity for early December for the past 5 years. The numbers are fascinating. To my eye, it looks like Ontario's ICU numbers are fairly consistent. Pretty much, people much smarter than me, excuse me, please send me your feedback. And here's the chart, and I'll get me out of the way here because I'm in the way. But the 2015 number, the weighted occupancy was 83%. 2016, the weighted occupancy rate was 84%. 2017, 85.74%. 2018, 84%. 2019, 82%. 2020, so far, 80.43%. And I don't have... Oh, as of December 16th, those are the numbers according to this guy's source. And presumably, I don't have a link that shows the original source, but I think he's the original source, or the government of Ontario would be the original source. But isn't that interesting, right? Isn't that interesting? The total patient days are higher in 2020 if you look at that, but not by a significant amount. 2018 comes close, and the unique patients is pretty close to 2016 to 2019. So we're not seeing this massive, scary pandemic in the data, and that's always what I'm concerned with, because the data is supposedly what's supposed to be driving our decisions, right? Unless it's Dr. Yaf and Dr. Williams, who just read whatever they write for them anyway, right? They're just reading a script. Here's Doug Ford. I'm concerned he's reading just a script. I'm convening an emergency meeting today with Minister Elliott, Dr. Williams, and Ontario's hospital leaders to discuss next steps to break the concerning trends in cases and hospitals in our province. Everything is on the table when it comes to protecting the health of Ontarians. And here's the same thing in a meme, so I'm not going to reread that. Here is November 11th. Toronto is going into lockdown. As Toronto enters the COVID-19 red zone, here's what you need to know. So that happened then. We're at the end of the 28 days. And Ford says everything is on the table with lockdown set to expire in Toronto and Peel. I'll read through this. As Toronto and Peel region rapidly approach the end of their 28-day lockdown, Premier Ford has said he's considering every option ahead of Monday. The Premier is set to meet with his cabinet and Ontario hospital leaders on Friday to discuss further steps to help curb the spread of COVID-19. Toronto and Peel leaders have remained steadfast in their message that lockdown restrictions should be extended through the holidays and even extended to neighboring regions. Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie said Wednesday that a lockdown needs to be implemented across the GTA. Mayor Crombie loves power, right? She wants to be the mayor of GTA. Look out, John Tory. Echoing these statements, Toronto Mayor John Tory said that he and leaders from neighboring regions in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area are discussing using the winter holiday to lock down even further. In a joint statement released Thursday, municipal leaders from Halton region said that any reports suggesting they had been consulted or are in favor of a GTHA-wide lockdown are inaccurate. We, the locally elected heads of council of Halton region, Burlington, Halton Hills, Milton, and Oakville are not in support of a GTHA-wide lockdown. We were not consulted, nor were any of us party to any discussion on the topic. Also, yesterday, there was a Rebel News report, and I don't have the link. I was going to put the link here, but I don't want to. Go watch the Rebel. Go check them out. And Menzies was talking to a council person in, I don't know where it was, but it was one of these Halton area. I think it was Milton. I think it was a Milton guy. And he was saying, if Doug Ford wants to implement a lockdown here, we will defy him. We will vote to defy him as the elected leadership of this area. So go check that out. It's very interesting. But let's look at, first, small retailers. I've been talking about Dan Kelly, and they're talking about locking down further small retailers. Now, Ford specifically says we have to do something for businesses. He talks about that in this here, but he also says I won't hesitate to do what it takes to slow down the trend of what we see. Here. Yeah, I'll mention this here. Hold on. Here, he says, we have to make sure we have something for the businesses. We can't keep going on like this for business owners. We have to make sure about the healthcare system, the capacity. So I think that it's, and he said, if we move forward and decide to do a further lockdown, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. We have to make sure we do something for the businesses. Now, he doesn't say small businesses. I looked up small and it didn't come up, and I was like, because in my head, I put small in front of that. But he just said we have to do something for the businesses. Which businesses? And that leads to Amazon, right? Amazon. So the small businesses have been locked down because, COVID-19, but small retailers, read this, more than 400 COVID cases at Amazon warehouse in Ontario amid concerns over industrial spread of the virus. What? And Dan Kelly says, this makes me very angry. It appears we're shutting down the wrong end of retail. We're closing small retailers with little evidence of COVID spread and pushing people to use Amazon, resulting in hundreds of employees becoming infected and spreading in the community. Now, they're just spreading positive cases. Positive cases. It has nothing to do with anything else, right? Ford goes on and he says, if we all just stop socializing and stop having friends and family over, we're doing everything we can to make sure this trend, ... we're throwing everything we can at it, the Premier added. He's very, very clear when he speaks. Ontario is reporting 2,432 new cases of COVID-19, with 737 new cases in Toronto, and 434 in Peel, 209 in York Region, and 190 in the Windsor-Essex County. And I think that it's interesting, if you look at this, since November 12th, the cases have just gone up, right? November 12th, the cases are just increasing, and that's all of Ontario, but here's Toronto. Okay, so the cases are coming down in Toronto on the back end here, right? But, so where are we? November, that's November 11th. So this is the new Toronto reporting dashboard, I guess. And it's got recovered cases and then active cases. So as they recover, they become either active or recovered or dead, right? So you can see very clearly, with much less testing, we had much higher deaths in the first wave, much lower deaths in the second wave. Where'd it go? Sorry, hold on. It just updated, I guess. Much lower deaths in the second wave. 12 active cases, 25 active cases on the 15th and the 16th. So they want to lock down further? Like, okay, did this lockdown work? It looks like from November 12th to comparing November 12th to today, that a lockdown did reduce a lot of the cases, right? Look at that. Some science to back up the lockdowns, because I assume that lockdowns didn't work. But what's the plan now? If you open up, are the lockdowns going to continue to work? What's the long-term plan? That's what I mean by lockdowns don't work. Like, what's the long-term plan here? You got 25 cases, 12 cases from the 16th, and nothing from yesterday or the day after. But what's the plan now? You know, like, are we going to open up? It looks like they want to lock us down. I don't understand the logic here. I don't understand the logic, especially considering the deaths and especially considering the criteria of the deaths, right? Hold on a second. Individuals who have died with COVID-19 but not as a result of COVID-19 are included in the case counts for COVID-19 deaths in Toronto. So, you know, it's very, very concerning when you've got a case-demic that isn't resulting in deaths and isn't really resulting in hospitalizations. We'll look at that in a minute. And people like Doug Ford and leadership are saying, you know what we've got to do? We've got to extend these lockdowns. We've got to make sure that through Christmas, and you know what? Through Easter too. Forget it. Through Easter and probably next summer. Because what's going to change? I don't understand the logic behind any of this, right? I don't. Pundit Class says, why will no Canadian journalist ask the government about PCR testing cycles? It matters. Do they not understand the science, or do they understand but still refuse to question the testing regime? Here is an article, the WHO, this is released on December 18th. WHO finally admit PCR tests create false positives. This article is pretty good. I wanted to show you the actual, the WHO tab here. And it says WHO information notice for IVD users. And it says users of RT-PCR reagents should read the IFU carefully to determine if manual adjustment of the PCR positivity threshold is necessary to account for any background noise, which may lead to a specimen with a high cycle threshold, CT value, result being interpreted as a positive result. The design principle of RT-PCR means that for patients with high levels of circulating viral load, relatively few cycles will be needed to detect virus, and so the CT value will be low. Conversely, when specimens return a high CT value, it means that many cycles were required to detect virus. In some circumstances, the distinction between background noise and actual presence of the target virus is difficult to ascertain. Thus, the IFU will state how to interpret specimens at or near the limit for PCR positivity. In some cases, the IFU will state that the cutoff should be manually adjusted to ensure the specimens with high CT values are not incorrectly assigned SARS-CoV-2 detected due to background noise. False positive. Background noise is false positive. And I'm not going to really go through this article, but it breaks it down into a bit more layman's terms. It goes a bit deeper than I am. So check that out if you're interested. Here's Toronto Public Health again. Cargill, this is in Guelph. They closed the plant due to 82 COVID-19 cases, right? Public health officials confirm 82 COVID-19 cases have been connected to the Cargill on Dunlop Drive. Are they testing asymptomatic people? I think they are. And if they're testing asymptomatic people, they're doing this specifically to shut down. This is meat processing. This is a meat processing plant. I see the Better Beef, I guess Cargill now, trucks going up and down the road on Victoria. So this is concerning. Why is it concerning? Beef and meat and all of that is going to get more expensive. Why? Because they're claiming COVID-19 outbreaks and infections. This is insidious. It is insidious what they're doing. They're lying. They're liars. They're lying. Okay? Ontario today is reporting 263. This is 21 hours ago, COVID patients in ICU, and 172 of which are on vents. That seems like a lot of extra capacity for a healthcare system supposedly on the brink. I've talked about this before. This is Millhouse again, his data, and he's highlighting the province has 1,000 acute care beds and 1,492 critical care beds. Why are we shutting down when we only have this number in the ICU and on vents, etc.? And I don't know why we're doing vents at all. Guelph has 6 people in the hospital. We're in control red. We have 6 people in the hospital. They're telling you not to visit your friends and family. They're telling you not to have Christmas. They're telling you need to stay locked in your house. Why? They can't justify this. We had 10 people in the hospital not that long ago. 9 people, no, 10, I think maybe even 11. And one of those people did die. We had a death at the middle of November to now. I can't remember exactly when they died. And I wanted to find out who they were so I could follow up and find out if the family agreed with the COVID-19 death, right? If they actually did die of COVID-19 or if it was something else. And I haven't been able to do that. But regardless, we have 6 people in the hospital. Case-demic. Oh my goodness, 114 active cases. If 114 active cases equals 6 people in the hospital, you don't need to destroy your culture, your economy, and your Christmas, your family time, all of that stuff. These people are lying to us. They're lying to us. Here's 81% of Toronto cases have no known origin. I wonder where they could be from. Yeah, I wonder, right? It's crazy. This is a little bit dense, and I'm not going to get into it. That's basically the highlight of that chart. You can check it out in the description. But goodness me. Randy Hillier says another doctor is speaking out against the lie. Will more doctors find the courage and conviction like Gil Nimi and Matt Strauss and some other ones? Or will they stay in the weeds, hidden from view, and continue to live the lie? Yeah, and the doctor says, it's a very sad day when colleagues are advocating for further lockdowns when they have clearly shown to be of no benefit and actually harmful for all facets of society. I must be missing something here because I've not seen pandemonium in my ER that has been reported. So that's interesting. If the mask, somebody sent me this meme the other day, and that's great, thank you. If the masks work, why the 6 feet? If 6 feet works, why the masks? If both work, why the lockdowns? If all 3 work, why the rushed vaccine? If vaccines are safe, why the no liability clause? Have you guys seen this yet? Have you seen this yet? Holy cow. Now, if you faint when you have pain, now I've heard a report that she woke up and she's okay, and she usually faints when she has pain. Okay, you make up your own mind here, but she's having the vaccine, and then she's having a little interview, and I'll play it, and here we go.
Did you know you were going to be receiving the vaccine?
I did, yes. So, all of my staff, we are excited to get the vaccine. We are in the COVID unit, so therefore, my team will be getting first chances to get the vaccine. And I know that it's really, I'm sorry, I'm feeling really dizzy. Oh, I'm sorry.
So, can you wait for your shot, or, can you wait for it to be mandated? If you want your kids to go to school, you get that shot. That's a PR nightmare. That's a PR nightmare. And that was the Pfizer vaccine. That was Pfizer. So, wow. The FAA is telling pilots not to fly for 48 hours after receiving Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. Good advice, I suppose, right? Considering what we've just seen. Ontario residents will receive proof for taking COVID-19 vaccine, health minister says. So I reported yesterday that they weren't going to be having a proof or anything like that. And they changed literally after I published my show. This was like the first thing I saw, and I was like, oh, come on. These things happen, I suppose. And here's a response from Twitter, and it's just a screenshot, but he says, are they really telling us that all 7 billion people, almost 8 billion people in the world need to be vaccinated for a virus that does not kill 99.99% of us? That would be totally ridiculous. Reactions to the vaccine would kill more than the virus, which is the real reason they want us all injected. So vaccine injuries happen. Vaccine injuries are not a myth or not something that anti-vaxxers have come up with or anything to that effect. Vaccine injuries happen. You can look up vaccine injury, and there's lists of vaccine injuries through all sorts of different countries, all through history, okay? All the way back to when we started using vaccines. Vaccine injury happens. You have a right to assess your own risk, just like driving. Driving injuries happen. It's the same thing. You look at the risk and the reward value, and you say, I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to get the vaccine. I'm going to get my kids vaccinated. You look at the risk and the reward, and you get to make that decision. Nobody can force you. Nobody should be able to force you. But that is where we're going. And so vaccine injuries happen at a rate of a certain percentage. And you know the percentage, or you have an idea of the percentage usually if you do trials, right? Because when you do trials, stuff like people passing out, if it has something to do with the vaccine, happens, right? These guys didn't seem very prepared for that. Do you think that she didn't mention, like, oh, I pass out sometimes? Like, oh, okay, maybe we'll get somebody else to do the interview. Right? But if vaccine injury is a certain percentage of known vaccines, and so this goes to Is this not experimentation? Is this not an active experiment on an uninformed population? Like that don't realize they're an experiment? They're being told it's safe. It's being articulated that this is safe. This is a good vaccine. You should get it in order to be able to participate in society, which is crazy. When's the last time you're like, hey, is your friend vaccinated for MMR? Did they get their MMR vaccination? Yeah? Okay, well, then they can come over. But if they didn't get their MMR, they're not coming. Like, that didn't happen before. And now that's where we're at. So if the vaccine causes injury, back to this, I keep getting off track, I feel, at a certain percentage, even if this weren't an experimental vaccine, even if this was a tested vaccine that had the proper amount of time to test and done in the proper sequence, which I don't think that this has been done in the proper sequence. They did it concurrent at the same time. So I don't know how you can say that we've tested this to a good degree. But if it were, you would still have a percentage of people that would still be affected by this vaccine. You're still causing harm. I don't get it. I do get it. I get it. But I don't get how people are just blindly walking into this saying, everything's fine. The government says everything's fine. So we're going to believe them because everything's fine. You know what the government is also telling you to do? Quote, the more voices there are taking a stand, the more impact our resolve will have, Toronto Public Health's doctor says, urging people to call out friends and family who plan to break COVID-19 rules. I remember seeing like a Cosby show or like an old TV show where somebody snitched on somebody else and then they tried to give them a lesson in that. And I remember basically snitches get stitches. It's stuck in my head. I can't remember what show it is. Maybe there's some other show. That's around anyway. But this is unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is preloading people. If your son or daughter calls and says, hey, can we come over for Christmas? We'd love to see you. And you're like, COVID-19 is a serious disease. You're doing it wrong. I often say your coworkers won't be there on your deathbed, but maybe your kids will be if you're lucky, right? And you're doing it wrong if that's your answer, okay? Go see your kids. Let your kids come and see you. And I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine not being able to see my kids at this time of year or any time of year, really. But go see them and don't snitch on them. Don't snitch on your neighbors. Our neighbors are the people we're supposed to be depending on. They're destroying what's the word? I used it yesterday. Hold on. Strong community bonds, I think it's not the word I used yesterday, but the ties that bind us, right? I said the other day, what if the guy who's being tackled by the security was somebody well-known in the local church or somebody well-known to a lot of people because they coached basketball or coached hockey or coached baseball? It doesn't matter, right? If it's your kid's baseball coach on the ground there because some overzealous security guard didn't like being called a stooge, do you step in, right? Do you just keep walking? We've been so conditioned in Canada just to keep walking. And now they're conditioning us to snitch on our neighbors. Read some history. This doesn't go well. This isn't good. This is very, very, very bad. Made me think of Seinfeld. Very bad man. The former Canadian spook, he says, in 1998, we were reporting we had discovered the Chinese consulate and the Chinese embassy were giving money to the political parties, all three political parties in Canada, from the panel discussion on China's influence operations in the West. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday or the other day, and it's people, I've been told by people, it's just not worth having the conversation with coworkers or with distant friends who are like, oh, how's the family? Everybody's fine. Okay, good. Don't mention those things. Okay, fine. But the conversation, it came up organically, and the conversation turned to why would they do this? And I said, well, like, this is what CCP does. This is what the Communist Party of China does. This is kind of the tactics they use. And that garnered a laugh. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, wow, like you're not even aware of how dangerous this infiltration is. And at that point I realized there's no point in continuing because like I'm not going to get anywhere. There's so much to cover, and they're not willing to not even believe, but not take seriously that somebody would think that, right? Like, okay, like what's going on with China? Why would you think that, right? Rather than ha ha ha, right? But anyway, yeah, there's infiltration. The Sidewinder report was buried by John Chrétien in 1997 because it might offend people, right? We're so offensive, us Canadians. We're so racist, right? So racist. It's unbelievable, right? And here we are China's influence operations in the West. And I mean, Joe Biden's China connection is on display for everybody to see. And here we are, right? Like, wow, very interesting situation happening currently in our zeitgeist. This is also really interesting. This is New York Times. Jason Compson is saying, he's an associate producer for Sam B, TBS network. I don't know, somebody retweeted this and I thought it was interesting. In the New York Times, a doctor explains why the CDC chose to de-emphasize the elderly, even though doing so would have saved lives. Quote, older populations are whiter. Instead of giving additional health benefits to those who already had them, we can start to level the playing field a bit. What? You'd save lives this way. Yeah, but they're white lives, so, right? It's crazy. It's crazy what's going on. Later in the piece, another doctor named Mark Lipsitch explains that teachers should not be considered essential workers for the purpose of being given priority vaccines by the CDD because, and I quote, they're often very white. Yeah. A third expert, an economist named Elise Gould, counters Dr. Lipsitch that teachers should be prioritized. Why? Because the families they teach are disproportionately black and brown, and those groups would benefit more than white people. We've gotten around the bend. I've done a whole look at what the Upper Grand District School Board is doing. Oh, and here's another thing. Hold on. I'll show you this. The Guelph Community Health Center is looking for proposals for advancing our commitment to the anti-oppression at the Guelph Community Health Center. The Guelph Community Health Center commits to anti-oppression and anti-racist practices with accountabilities across all levels of the organization that are described through our anti-oppression and diversity policy. Bringing these commitments to action has been enabled through the tireless work of organizations' anti-oppression work, alongside our leadership team and supported by board of directors. However, while we have made meaningful progress in many areas, including policy development, organizational training, learning and unlearning, and incremental shifts in our human resources practices, we have much room for continued growth and change. At the Guelph CHC, we know and understand that there's systemically rooted power and privilege in our local and global society, and that the resulting sense of superiority, conscious or not, by dominant groups, white, hetero, cisgender, male, able-bodied, etc., serves as a foundation for oppressive behavior. Through our lens of anti-oppression, we know and understand that oppression is a determinant of health, and that racism and other forms of oppression degrade the health of people of color in our community. So they're looking for somebody within our provincial commitment to blah, 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 blah. We make many commitments. There are several specific areas we continue to struggle to implement meaningful and sustainable improvement and change. These include developing anti-racism, anti-oppression strategies to identify, name, and confront practices that reproduce oppression and its structures within our organization. Come and tell us how we're still being racist because we can't figure it out. Is this what we want money going to for the community health center? Like, I just don't understand the rationale. They say that, they want to focus on health, and they say that racism is tied to health, but focusing like this and victimizing or like attributing victimhood to people and saying we're so terrible we can't even see it. We're so awful. We need to hire consultants to tell us where we're so racist and how we should change. Shouldn't you be responding to complaints and actually like delivering health services? Like, deliver health services first, respond to complaints second. And if the complaint has a racist nature, then look at your policy. But otherwise, this is navel gazing. Like, this is self-flagellation. This is unbelievable. Like, this is Don Martin being a liberal stooge, right? A liberal tool. Don Martin says, my weekly blog, why Justin Trudeau is my reluctant pick for politician of the year. I'm not going to give that any time. The blocked. I love that. Wonderful. But yeah, like what the replies are wonderful. The replies are worth it. The article's not worth it. Here's Andrew Lawton outlining the Parliamentary Press Gallery and their exclusionary practices. I think it's worth mentioning. I'm not going to go deep into it because I'm already a little long, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning. There's certainly having our leaders questioned by people who will give them actual tough questions is important. Look at Doug Ford. He doesn't get any tough questions. They're like, How long is the current lockdown, and can we extend it and further lock people down? And what is your timeline for locking people down further? Thank you. And can we please lock down retailers from selling non-essential goods? And the non-essential goods should be defined by me. Thank you. Like our representation is absolutely null and void. So they're just trying to do that for Justin Trudeau by limiting the access to the Parliamentary Press Gallery. And not great. I'd love to call into the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Hello, Justin. Love to talk with you. Mines, Minerals, and Green Energy Reality Check. This was a worthwhile read I had to read through the other day. It's just the last tab. I was going to actually cut it, and I didn't. So here we are at the end of the show. I don't know, everyone. This whole zeitgeist that they're spinning in the press, the COVID-19 restrictions, having schools need to do all these things for liability, having insurance need to go up for liability, all this stuff, it's destroying us. We're losing ourselves in it. And the civil nature of our society, the ability to go out and smile and everybody communally, well, even Christmas cheer, right? All of that is being decimated by manufactured fear and spun lies and blatant lies. They're not even good lies. They're blatant lies with no answers. They don't want to answer us. They don't want to be held accountable. And for whatever reason, they think that they're above that. I don't, and the only reason I say that is because their actions say that they believe that they're above that. They believe that they're above accountability for this. They believe that the PCR testing cycles are good enough. They believe that the death statistics are good enough. They're good enough to lock us down. They're good enough to cancel Christmas. They're good enough to blame you for daring to visit your friends and family. How dare you? How dare you? How dare they? How dare they? How dare they infringe on our rights? How dare they shut down our economy? How dare they steal our culture? How dare they propagate this on us? How dare they? Thanks for watching, everyone. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.